Welcome back to the table. Today, Emily and I have a look at a game that we're very excited about. This one is called Septima from Mind Clash Games. We had a chance to bring this copy back from Origins. We've played it a couple times. And we wanted to give you not a complete how to play today, but a fairly thorough overview about how this game is going to play, because we are going to have a round one as well on the channel. So if you want to learn the game and how it's played, you can watch this video. And then if you want to watch it how it's played, you can watch that
and see who wins.
And if you really want to make us happy, you can watch both videos multiple times. But anyway, we're going to be talking about Septima, and you have the entire game here out on the table. Now, we do have a couple little modules off the camera right now, but I can show you we have the main board, we have the rights board, which is one of the modules. We have all these potions you're going to be making because you're witches.
We're witches.
Yeah.
And the main witch, the Septima, is retiring, and she's trying to find a successor. So we are trying to prove that we are the most wise witch and should take the new title of Septima.
Yeah, so we're going to have witches on our player boards. We have sort of our own little coven. One of those witches is going to be a lead witch. We have an apprentice witch. We might be able to gain more witches throughout the game, but like I said, we're going to be brewing these potions. Why are we brewing potions? Well, to do sort of nice witch things.
Yeah.
Because we're going into the villages here and healing people.
We're good witches.
We are. All witches are good witches, right? But there are going to be some citizens that aren't so happy. We've got some neutral citizens and some hostile citizens. They will come into play later. And then across the side over here, we have all these ingredients that we're going to be able to collect throughout the board. We've got berries, roots, mushrooms, skulls, and herbs. And on the rights track, this is going to be a very Euro-y track that you climb up. You might collect some charms, which are effectively usable items. Some of them are ongoing. Some of them you use and tap to do various different things to help you sort of navigate and break some of the rules. And then, of course, we have Septima right here with her tokens. This is a game where we're going to be playing cards out of our hand. And when you play a card, you're going to do a main action, but you might also match someone else at the table if you play the same card. However, even if you don't do that, you might match Septima because she has two tokens here below her that are always going to be representative of some of the cards that you have in your hand that you can play.
And it's very thematic because sometimes you want to match so that way you get that little bonus. Your witches working together, you can get more done. But by doing that, you're raising suspicion of the witch hunters who are also around the board and are trying to get your witches put on trial. Because at the end of every round, we're going to have a trial to see if we can get these witches into our coven, safe, scot-free, the town is happy.
Or lost, in the way witches are. Lost, unfortunately. But we're trying to add those witches. So you'll look at the witches, and all the witches, of course, have these great powers, so you want to try to acquire them so you can use those powers. Now, in the center of the board, sort of in the inside, is sort of the village. This is where you're going to find some of these patients, and we have 4 out here set up for a 2-player game, but there's 3 different types. There's the green, the blue, and the red. And then there's either 1 or 3 buildings, again, depending on whether or not you play with this full module. Every game is going to have the hospital right here in the center if it's by itself. Otherwise, if you use all 3, you're going to shuffle those tiles up and put them out here. The other ones we have here are the market. This is going to help benefit you when you're brewing potions. And then the pub. This is going to help you when you're trying to recruit people to sort of be supporters of you and help you.
Of the trial.
Yeah, help you in the trials. So with all of that said, of course, we also have our player boards. And I'd mentioned this is where we store our witches, but it's also, and this is a very important part, where you're going to keep track of how many people you've healed. And as you heal people, you move up these tracks. And you're going to get bonuses, but most importantly, you're going to be able to unlock some significant points for scoring throughout the game, and especially during the end of the game. One bit of setup that I want to point out, I don't want this to be a how to play, so we're not going to cover everything, but one really cool thing they do here is you're starting resources, if you will. It's not just ingredients, but they have this little player reference here, and on the side of it, they have this track of 3 times, 2 times, 1 time. Everyone is going to get these prologue cards here. And the prologue cards have a top and a bottom of various things. As you can see here, these ones that I have a couple different ingredients as options on the top. And this one has one of the potions already brewed. And then this one allows me to put one of my loyal citizens in the crowd, which would help me with the trial. You're going to be able to organize these how you see fit, laying one on top of the other and then laying them next to that board to get 3 of the top, 2 of the middle, and 1 of the bottom, which is a really cool way and variable way to set things up. So that is just one of the cool aspects of setup. But
and some of those are really great too. You can start with some potions, so right away you can start healing people on your first turn.
Exactly. Now, we thought at first that was probably a big leg up.
It
like,
is.
oh, I got potions and I can jump in and heal. And it is for the beginning of the game. But for the most part, people will get out of cycle with one another. So if someone heals early, they're not brewing. So if you have ingredients, you're probably going to brew and then be able to heal. And healing is a big part of the game for sure.
Definitely.
Now, we're going to jump right into walking you through the structure of a turn. This is based around this lunar cycle here. We're going to be playing over 4 seasons. And each of the 4 seasons, you're going to run through this cycle 5 times. So in total, you're going to have effectively 20 turns and 5 turns in each round or season. Yeah. So at the beginning of each of the 5 lunar cycles, if you will, you're going to first make sure Septima has 2 of her tokens face up. So in this case, we have the recruit and the move action, which are going to be things that we could match with Septima. Now, like Emily said, you can match so that you can get a little bit more out of your card, but if you match with Septima, you're going to go up 2 on the suspicion track.
Yes.
And just, we'll explain this later, but it's safe to be said, you don't want to be suspicious.
Don't be suspicious.
If you're a witch, in these times, suspicion's not a good thing.
A thing to mention here, too, is that when you're playing at higher player counts, the first one is going to be what you're using this round, and you can plan for the next round, Septima, this is going to scooch on over, and she'll have move next time. When you're playing at 2 players, you can match Septima on either of her tokens. So there's a little bit of planning. You can see how they're going to cycle through. But there's also a chance of hoping for what Septima is going to do next. Hopefully it lines up with your plans and what you want to do.
Yeah, and of course you also have to consider this when you're taking the next action, because you also might match with everyone else's cards.
Right, which leads us into the next part, which is that everyone is going to take their cards, and you have a different number of cards, so there might be 8 actions if you're starting with just the base game, or if you're adding in some of these modules, they might add a few different options of actions you can take. But everyone has the same set. You're going to choose one of them, and the cards have an ability at the top and also a bonus if you're matching. So when you're choosing which action you're going to do, you're going to place it face down, everyone at the same time, and you really got to be thinking, though, I wonder what David's going to do. I'm wondering what Septima's doing. Do I want to match either of them? And that all comes into play with your planning on which action you're going to take. Once we've all done it, we reveal.
Yeah, and that brings us to the next stage. After everyone reveals at the table in player turn order, you're going to effectively take your turn. This is sort of the meatiest part of the game. Now, this is a 3-step process. You're going to do the action on your card, but first, the first option every player has is to take 1 free move with their coven leader. And this coven leader is going to be out on the board somewhere. We've laid them face down so that you can see where they are. And this free move lets you move to another node. You're effectively going to move around the intersections around these hexes. So if I'm right here, I'm adjacent to these 3 hexes. Or if I'm in here, I'm starting to be adjacent to some of the patients. So once you've moved your free move, then you're going to take the main action of your card. We're going to explain all of these in a second, but I want to finish this bit right now. After you take the main action of your card, then you're going to check to see if you've matched anyone at the table or Septima, and you're going to be able to, if you matched, take that collective action at the bottom. And these are a variety of things. For instance, I'm collecting, so I would collect some ingredients, and then additionally collect maybe a different ingredient, because the ingredient collecting is a little tricky. Yes. So let's take a moment now to talk about all of the cards as briefly as possible, just to give you an idea of the different things that you'll do on your turn.
So the first one is easy. It's move. So like David said, you start your turn with 1 free movement, and then the move card is going to allow you to move your pawn 4 more spaces. So this is really what's going to help you get across the board and get to some spots where you can collect more resources, or if you've been out in the field collecting resources, get back into your patients so you could start healing them.
Yeah, and that bottom piece is if you match, you're going to be able to collect an ingredient while you move anywhere along the path where you moved, which is kind of nice, but you have to match, which you did with Septima, so that would work out. The next action is to collect. Now, collecting sounds simple. You're looking at this and go, oh, you just get all of the resources around or ingredients where you are. That is not quite the case. You need to look at the lunar cycle here, and as you can see, We're in round 1, so we can only collect mushrooms and herbs at this point. Those are variably set up at the beginning of the game, and for the most part, they're going to stay that way unless you have some particular charms that let you mess with that.
Right.
But you're going to basically take your free move if you want, and then collect the resources on the hexes depicted. So right now, if I were right here, there's no mushrooms, but there's 2 herbs, so I would be able to collect
2 herbs.
2 herbs. Now, if I matched, then I can collect one single other ingredient from one of these hexes that is not within the lunar cycle. So in this case, I could choose either this skull or this berry and take that as well.
Right. And you really want to do that because you want to be getting as many resources as you can, because the next action is going to be that you're going to brew. So once you have all of your herbs and ingredients and you want to make potions, you can brew to make up to 3 potions on a turn. You have a handy little reference sheet next to you that shows you all the different potions you can make. There are 3 basic remedies that are going to help you heal all the 3 different types of patients. And then you have some other special potions that are going to allow you to do game-breaking things.
Yes.
Like one of them allows you to move your pawn to any place on the board, which is super nice. You don't have to take that move action anymore. There's the love potion that allows you to add one of your loyal citizens to the crowd and then take from the crowd into a trial. So pretty powerful actions. The nice thing too about the special potions are that they give you wisdom, so the victory points.
Wisdom is the victory point. So all those special powers or potions give you those points. All the remedies don't, but the remedies are very important because that's what you're going to use when you heal. Healing is the next action we talk about. When you heal, you're going to be able to heal any 2 adjacent patients. Now, if you look here in the middle, if I'm right here, I'm adjacent to just this one patient. However, the hospital is going to serve as basically a never-ending supply of patients. You're going to be able to do 2 different adjacent ones, so I could heal this red patient and 1 of any color from this patient here. Now, the big difference is when you heal a normal patient, it's going to ultimately go off the board at the end of this phase. However, when you do that, you're going to go up the corresponding track on your player board, getting that bonus, and then thereby getting you further up those tracks for points. Now, when you heal at the hospital, you do still get to go up that track, but you don't get to take the bonus on that. So it's the hospital is a great way to at least try to drive up those points, but you're not going to get those bonuses as well.
And then if you match with someone, you can also then put a citizen from the crowd into the trial. So you're kind of doing 2 big moves at once when you're healing. And the nice bonus on heal is that you put a citizen from the crowd into any trial chamber. So if I had one of my loyal citizens already in the crowd, I can put him in the trial chamber and he's already part of the chamber for this trial. Yeah,
you want your loyal citizens in that trial chamber. We'll get to that towards the end. But the more loyal citizens you have, the more likely you are to A, win the trial for the witch, but B, potentially get that witch in your coven.
Right. And the way you do that is the next action. So you have recruit, which allows you to add a loyal citizen from your supply into the crowd. So now you got some of your people in the crowd helping out. The bonus is if you're matching, you would add another loyal citizen into the crowd.
Yeah, and that's nice. You start with 6 loyal citizens off the board, unless you had something that let you put in there originally. But once you get all of them in there, you've really increased your chances to win that trial. And you give yourself an opportunity that if you have them there, you can move them down here with some of those other powers. Now, one of those powers is to plea. This is where you're going at the court's mercy and saying, please, 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 believe me, I'm not a witch. And you're going to be able to put a citizen from the crowd down into any trial chamber. Now, I want to talk about this. We have one main trial chamber. This is the first one, and then the second one. This one's going to start with 4 witches in it. That's 1 for each season of the game. The top trial chamber is going to be if you get caught. We're going to talk about that more in a second, but there is a possibility for more witches to be up there, no matter what the player count is. The bonus for pleading is additionally, you can remove one of the hostile citizens from the crowd, which is also good. That increases the chances the witch will go free. And you score 2 wisdom if you do that.
Yeah.
So, like we said, the matching is very nice, but at the same time, you have to balance that with whether or not you want to raise your suspicion.
And the nice thing, too, about plea and the wording that they have in this game is it says put a citizen, any citizen. So you, most of the time, would probably choose your own citizen if you have one in there, right? Because then you're getting points from it and you're helping win. But if David looks like he's winning it, I don't have any citizens in there, I might decide to put a hostile citizen into the trial just so I can say, well, David, I don't want you to win it.
Yeah,
I want this witch in particular to not go to your coven, but to just be found as a witch.
Yeah, it is an interesting push and pull there. It just depends on what you have going on there and whether or not you want a witch. You might have your board filled with witches, and that one's not interesting to you, so you just want to try to challenge the trial, if you will. It's not a very witchy thing to do, but you could do it.
But you're also, again, trying to stay away from the witch hunters. The next action you can do is chant. As you're going through the game and you're matching with people, you're being more suspicious, right? So your suspicion is going to start at 0, but it'll keep rising and rising throughout the game. At some point, if you can chant, it'll lower your suspicion by 1. And if you're matching with someone, instead of raising the suspicion again, it'll actually lower it a second time. So this can be a great way if you've been taking a lot of bonus actions throughout the game to bring it back down to reasonable measures and say, stop looking at my coven.
Yeah, no witches here.
No witches here.
So another thing you can do, and this is in the base game and in all versions of the game, is use the Remember card. The Remember card is that card in games like this that allow you to take an action that you've already taken. Now, the cool thing about this is there's a Remember token with Septima, and other players, of course, have a Remember card. So when you match this, you are matching with the Remember icon.
Right.
And if you do that, no matter which action from your discard pile that you choose to do, you're going to do that action, and it's going to be treated as though you matched. So you're going to be able to do the bottom action of that card. But, again, it also increases your suspicion.
Yep. And then the last one that we played with, since we're using the right track module on the side, we also have a right action we can take, which allows us to advance 1 step up the track. And if we match, we would allow us to refresh a charm, which a lot of these, again, you are kind of tappable, so you can use it once, and then as you get higher up the track, you'll get more charms, or you'll refresh a charm. It can be really hard, though, to get the timing right on refreshing these. Really,
yes.
You're probably only going to use them once, maybe twice a game. So this, matching on this, is super helpful because it allows you to refresh it and take that game-changing event one more time.
Yeah,
or gain an ingredient.
These charms are interesting. I would agree. They aren't exactly ridiculously powerful. Although, not all charms are created equal.
Yes, not all charms are equal.
At least in the version of the game that we have right now. But they're not wildly different in power. And refreshing them is not going to happen very often. So don't expect that you're going to get a huge handful of charms and use them a lot.
Yeah.
Because refreshing them is a little bit tricky. And you can see here on the right board, I do want to talk about this for a second. This is the first big module that you would add to the game. It adds these charms. It adds this other thing you can do with a few points at the top, not insignificant ones. But this is not a module about adding a whole nother avenue for scoring points.
Right.
This is a module for adding a little bit more crunchiness to the game so that if you're that player who really tries to finesse their gameplay and efficiently pull off everything you're doing so that you're doing this and that raises you here and that does a thing, you can pull off some turns like that, which are very, very satisfying. But it's really going to make a little bit of the difference in whether you win or lose at the end of the game, not give you a whole nother avenue for points.
Right. So those are the main actions you'll take. Once everyone has taken their action, we're going to check on who had the collective action, so who did things together. If you had the collective bonus, you'll get to move your right track up. The one caveat with this is that some of these spaces you can use with any kind of action, but some of these have a specific symbol on them. So in order to move up here, I need to be having the brew action as the thing I matched on.
Yeah, that is really interesting. It's one difference between this and using the right card. When you use the right card, you're able to move up and ignore those symbols. But when you're using this bonus in this phase of the game, you have to have matched on one of these things. So like Emily said, if you're here, you have to have matched with brew or recruit, or you're just simply not going up.
Right, right. And as you can see on the right track too, there are crystals spread out throughout it, which are basically a wild resource. So it might take a little bit more planning where you're like, oh, I really want to match, and not just match, but I want to match on recruit so that I can get that crystal when I go up. But once you've seen who's matched, you also see who's matched to raise suspicion. If I match with David or another player, I'm going to move my suspicion up by 1. But if I match with Septima, since she's the lead witch, I'm going to actually go up by 2. So it can really quickly get that suspicion going, and which is not great because then the witch hunters are going to come out.
Yeah, and that suspicion plays 2 roles. It plays a role here with the witch hunters. It's also going to play a role with the trials. But with the witch hunters, the next phase, G, is where you're going to check your suspicion if it went up. If it went up this round, and you have a witch hunter in your zone, and we didn't point this out, but at the beginning of the game, there are 3 witch hunters on the board in 3 zones that I'm illustrating right now on screen. If you're in that zone, for instance, if I was right here and Emily was right here, we'd both be in zones with witch hunters. If we raise suspicion in player order, we're going to determine whether this witch hunter in this zone could reach me. To do that, you're going to take the value of your suspicion level, say if Emily or I went up to 2, and then you're going to roll the suspicion die. That's a 0. So I would add 0 to the 2. He can't reach me. But if my suspicion level was quite high and I rolled a +2 on this, and the die has a variety of different sides, including one that just says that he's asleep and that basically cancels the hunt. He won't come after you. He could reach you, and if he does, he doesn't technically move out here. You just determine whether he could, and if he could, you're going to get caught. You're going to take the leader of your coven, and you're going to put it right here on the second trial space. Now, that's not a great thing.
No, I would not recommend.
A couple reasons why you want to manage those witches. One, I've now lost the power that witch has, and you're going to use those witches' powers throughout the game quite a bit.
Yes.
When you choose those at the beginning of the game, you're going to get 3 and choose any 2 of them as your leader and apprentice, and it's going to basically direct some of how you want to play the game. So losing one's not good. The other reason is we all start the game with this Book of Divinations card. This is an end-of-game scoring card. Straightforward, but it has 4 different end-of-game scoring opportunities. You're only going to score one of those for each witch you have at the end of the game. So if you have 1 witch, you're only going to be able to choose one of those. If you have all 4, you have options. Now, not maybe likely you're going to score all 4.
Right, you'd really have to work at getting all 4 of them at once. But
there's some big point opportunities. So, long story short, protect your witches. Don't be too suspicious.
Protect the coven.
So you're going to lose a witch like that, and then the other player is going to do the same thing. Now, if you were suspicious, we're going to move on to phase H, and a witch hunter wasn't in your zone. So, for instance, say I was in this zone right here, the yellow, and he was in this right here. There's no witch hunter in this, so I wouldn't get hunted. But in phase H, if that were the case, and I'd raised my suspicion, we're going to move a witch hunter from the nearest other hut to mine. And if there's a tie, like there is here, we're going to move it from the lowest value one. So now you effectively can't just hide out in a zone and never have witch hunters coming after you. I'm going to have to consider that for the next round of the game.
Right, exactly. And so then once we've done that, we'll do that 5 different times in a season. And after the 5th time we do it, there's going to be the trial. So once we have the trial, we're going to look at everybody who's out here in the common area, and we're going to add in there additional hostile folks based on how high our suspicion is. So if my suspicion was up to 3, David's is up to 2, we're going to add in 3 more hostile people into the bag.
All go into this bag, along with everyone that was already in the crowd. And remember, that recruit action, the plea action, we're going to get varying numbers from all the players at the table in there. Maybe even a couple more hostiles.
Yep.
Maybe even a couple more neutrals. Who knows? You put them all in this bag, and the ones that were in the trial room, they're already there. So you've already kind of like
seating.
planned your destiny. They're sitting there ready to do their bidding. And then you basically pull them one out at a time and fill this according to player count. In a 4-player game, you're going to fill it all the way. But in a 2-player, you're going to go to right here. Now, after you've done that, you're going to determine whether the trial was successful for the witch or not. To do so, you're going to look at every hostile citizen. They're -1. The neutral citizens are 0. And every loyal citizen, no matter whose player it is a +1. So in this case, we'd have +1, +1, -1, neutral. The end result is a +1. As long as it's positive, the trial's successful, the witch wins.
Katharina, you're free.
The first thing you're going to do is Emily here has the most loyal citizens here. So she's going to get the witch. Now,
Come to the coven.
If we were tied, you're going to look at a couple things. To break that tie, whoever has the fewest witches is going to get dibs on that witch.
Which makes sense.
If there's still a tie, you're going to look at who was first in the trial chamber, which brings us back to that plea action of getting people down there into the trial chamber. Now, if it is 0 or negative, I'm sorry, Catherine.
Oh, no.
You don't win. This witch is going to be taken out of the game. But regardless, we're going to score some points for our loyal citizens there. If it was a successful trial, each loyal citizen, no matter whether you won or lost personally, the witch, is going to get 2 points per citizen. If you lose, it's going to be 1 point per citizen. And then after that, all of the ones from a winning situation, those citizens are going to come back to that player. So they're going to have to work harder to get them back into the crowd. Whereas all of mine in this case, had Emily won that witch, are going to go back into the crowd for the future round. So all of that work I did to get them there isn't lost.
Right, you still get to use them later. And also, once we've done this first trial, in this case we had 2 witches, so we'd keep pulling from that same bag to fill up the second witches. And so I could end up winning 2 witches here, or more likely, if David and I had both put loyal citizens into the crowd, I'll probably end up winning 1, David might end up winning 1, or some of them might get lost in the shuffle. But it's cool when you have multiple out because multiple witches are going and shuffling into different boards.
Yeah, it's really, and this is going to happen probably a little bit more often in higher player counts than in a 2-player game.
Or late game.
But I have to say again, along with a lot of other aspects of this game, this is one of those really thematic aspects of the game. The mechanisms in this game, I think, tie very well with what you're doing. You really get into the feel of this thing. We didn't talk about some of the things they had out here. We'd mentioned the market and the pub. If you, for instance, do the brewing action while you're adjacent to the market, it lets you freely trade up to 3 ingredients while you're brewing. Very cool, very thematic. In the pub, if you do the recruit action and you're adjacent to that, you can put another loyal citizen into the crowd. However, they come with a hostile citizen. Because, you know, pub's going to have a variety of people. So the theme here is really, really interesting, and there are a couple more things to add even more theme to a game about witches. And that is the omens module. The omens are going to be effectively event cards. You're going to use the same one as the last omen card, and then you're going to shuffle 3 out of a deck of a few and put them on top. When these come into play is after the trial. So regardless of the trial's outcome, you're going to flip one of these omen cards, and they have a top and a bottom. If the trial was good, we're going to use this side of the card. If the trial was bad, we're going to be using this side of the card.
And you just they affect everyone.
Yeah, they affect everyone. And they can be simple things like, for instance, if we'd won, it says each player gains a practical potion, which are those potions that let you do a game-breaking thing. However, if we'd lost the witch, evaporating magic, players cannot use practical potions. And that is for the whole next round. So if I'd made a lot of practical potions and planned on using them, too bad. So they're effectively events like that that are going to come out every round. The next module, in addition to the rights module, which we already explained, is the familiars module. This is a pretty cool one. We haven't played with this one yet, so we don't know all the details. But you're going to have these familiars that you get at the beginning of the game, and these player pieces for each one. During the game, you add a transfigure card to your deck. This is going to replace the chant, because this module is all about suspicion, or managing it. You're also going to increase your suspicion at the beginning of the game if you use this module by 2. Now, during the game, you can play the transfigure card, and it's going to do a couple different things. One, you're going to be able to change from your sort of human form into your animal form. When you do that, you replace your human witch with this tile, and it's going to do a couple things. It's going to limit the actions you can take, and each familiar has a different listing of the actions they're allowed to play out of their hand.
That's cool.
And it's going to enhance one of those actions. For instance, the snake here says when they move, if your move ends adjacent to a witch hunter, set it to inactive and score 3 wisdom.
Wow.
So yeah, you can move along the outskirts here and end next to a witch hunter and actually score some points and manage that witch hunter. I guess you're scaring it off because you're a snake.
Yeah.
But things like that. Now, the other cool thing is when you're a familiar, you're not going to really raise suspicion. And in fact, you're going to lower suspicion when you don't match. So matching doesn't raise it, but not matching also actually lowers it. So going into this form lets you do a few things like that. And then at the end of the round, you can actually switch back. The other huge thing that this module does is when you play that transfigure card, that is when you can take all your cards back. Usually, you're taking all those cards back at the end of the round. So at the beginning of each round, you have all those cards to use. However, when you're using this, the cards stay out there round around, so you have to change to an animal in order to get all your cards back. But it opens up, I think, probably some interesting strategies for managing that card play. as well as some really cool thematic ways of maneuvering around this
Right.
board.
And since each person has their own familiar, you're really kind of having like asynchronous player powers almost.
Yeah.
Because if you're playing the snake, you might be around the outskirts all the time to start inactivating those witch hunters. If I'm playing the cat, I have stuff that's activating when I'm at least one town hex is adjacent. So I might be playing towards the middle. And we might be doing vastly different things in this game just because of our familiars and what our
and
player
it looks,
powers are.
they're still in the midst of balancing some of these things. They're tweaking a lot to the game. The rule book that we had wasn't even quite complete. But I will say they've done some things that evidence some balancing here. The cat, for instance, like Emily just said, it wants to be sort of in this town area. However, you'll see here it can't heal. So you can't even use the heal action when you're the cat. You could heal when you're the snake. That is an interesting idea to think about. But it's interesting how they've balanced the powers you can use as well as that variable power that gets added. So those are the modules to Septima. We've given you a thorough explanation of how this is played without quite getting to a full how to play.
Sure.
Like I said earlier, we're going to have a round 1, so be sure to check that out if you want to see the game played. Emily and I are going to play through a first full cycle of 5 turns.
Full season.
Yeah, full season and ending with a trial, so you can see exactly how it's played. But if you have any questions about anything we've said here, please make them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to try to answer them.
And this is on Kickstarter right now.
This is on Kickstarter. By the time you're watching this thing is running on Kickstarter. So you can also check that campaign out, because I'm sure there's even more details there. If you have any questions, please let us know. And as always, until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.